Imagine waking up. You don't know your name. You don't know where you are. You have no memory of how you got here. There are two people close to you physically, and they are dead in their pods, and you don't know who they are. And there is a computer. It says you're in a spaceship. You are alone 12 light years from Earth, traveling at a fraction of speed of light toward a star you've never heard of. That's the opening of Project Hail Mary, and somehow, impossibly, it gets more interesting from here. Project Hail Mary is adapted from Andy Weir's book with the same name. He's the author of The Martian, that was also adapted into a movie, which I'm sure most of you have seen. The Martian was the story of an astronaut named Mark Watney, played by Matt Damon. He gets stuck on Mars and he must survive utilizing his scientific knowledge. The villain is Mars. The helpful companion is science. And this movie did something almost no science fiction film manages to do. It made science genuinely thrilling. Not science as a backdrop, not science as a plot device. Science is the actual point of the movie. At the time, I thought it was a one-hit wonder. Everything about it felt like lightning in a bottle. How do you do that twice? Well, Andy Weir didn't try to do that twice. He did something harder. He wrote the Project Hail Mary. On the surface, the setup of the story looks familiar. One man, alone, in space, solving problems with science. And the nerd humor is similar. The scientific inspiration is similar. But The Martian was a survival story, and Project Mary is a salvation story. The stakes are no longer one man's life. They are every life on Earth and possibly beyond. The sun and every other star in our neighborhood, except for one, are dimming. An organism called Astrophage is consuming their energy. And Ryland Grace, played by Ryan Gosling, is the last desperate shot at figuring out why. Grace is a molecular biologist who became a middle school teacher, someone who actively retreated from ambition, from risk, from connection, and yet here he is, alone in a ship with no memory of how he got there, carrying the weight of civilization on his shoulders. That's already a compelling film, but then something happens that elevates it into a whole different level. It is not alone. Now, let's take a closer look at what this movie is really communicating, the ideas and emotions it's trying to convey. And we need to start with the science because this is Andy Weir's greatest gift to science fans. And it is on full display here. The threat in this film is Astrophage is built on one of the most fascinating and still deeply mysterious areas of real physics, neutrinos. We know neutrinos exist. They pass through everything, through the Earth, through you, right now in the billions. But we know almost nothing else about them. Andy Weir took this scientific uncertainty and extrapolated from it, constructing Astrophage as an organism that feeds on stellar energy in a way that is scientifically consistent with what we know. But the real scientific achievement of this film is the alien himself, Rocky. Think about every extraterrestrial you've ever seen on screen. Cinema has been putting aliens in front of us since 1902, when George Méliès sent a rocket ship into the face of the moon. And all that time, almost every alien design has been driven by either what does the filmmaker want you to feel or plot conveniences. For example, horror movies need aliens to be terrifying, so you get the xenomorph with all the teeth and aggression. Films about wonder and innocence give you E.T., a gentle demeanor, unmistakably childlike, like big eyes. Films that want to make you feel the cold strangeness of the universe give you things like the cryptic heptapods of Arrival. But Rocky is different. Rocky was designed backwards. Andy Weir started with a real planet. 4D Eridani A is a star that NASA has cataloged, and it has a known planet in its orbit. It's called Eridani AB, and it's a world more than 8 times the mass of Earth, hence 8 times the gravity, sitting closer to its star than Mercury is to our Sun. And Andy Weir asked a single question: if life evolved on that planet, what would it look like? The answer is Rocky. So, Rocky cannot have eyes because there is nothing to see, it's dark, so he has echolocation. Rocky is small and dense, built for high gravity and high pressure. Rocky breathes ammonia because it's abundant in its atmosphere. And every single one of these traits was calculated, not invented, not made up.
So now I'm like, okay, thick atmosphere, really hot, short day, 2 Gs of surface gravity. What can live in that environment? And so bit by bit, I put it together. I realized it would have to be very strong, kind of squat, because it's like high gravity.
What this does to the film is profound, because when you understand that Rocky isn't a narrative device, but he is as precisely a real alien as fiction can manage, every scene between him and Grace takes on a different weight. This is not 2 characters, this is 2 biospheres, 2 entirely separate evolutionary paths happening to exist, happening to meet in the silence between stars. A science-based, emotional story with high stakes. But here's what I think this film is really about. We are more divided than we've been in living memory, politically, culturally, even within families. Social media has trained us to be divisive and polarizing. Connection, real connection, the kind that requires effort and risk, is becoming harder for a lot of people. And Ryland Grace is one of those people. He's a man who gave up on that. He is not antisocial in a dramatic way. He's not broken or tragic. He just prefers small. He prefers to stay contained in his comfort zone. A classroom he controls, a life without too many open edges. He is in most specific sense a loner, not because the world hurt him, but because the world felt like more than he wanted to manage. And then the universe puts him in a room, or rather a solar system, with the most different possible other, an extraterrestrial, Rocky. And he has to work with Rocky, so he needs to be able to communicate with him. The communication sequence in this film is one of the most satisfying things I've seen in science fiction. It kind of reminds me of Arrival, which I consider to be a masterpiece, so it's a good thing. Grace and Rocky don't share a language, they don't share a biology. Everything we use as a shortcut to human connection, like eye contact, body language, shared reference, is completely unavailable to them. What they have is curiosity and science and math. They built a language together, piece by piece. And there is something deeply moving about watching that process because it strips connection down to its absolute essence. You don't need to look alike. You don't need to come from the same place or share the same history or agree about anything. You need to decide the other mind is worth the effort. That's not just a hopeful message for alien contact. That's a direct challenge to the way most of us are living right now. The film doesn't hit you over the head with this though. It doesn't lecture. It's never preachy. It just shows you 2 beings who had every reason to treat each other as threats are choosing instead to treat each other as the most interesting thing in the universe. And by the time their friendship has fully formed, you realize that the film has quietly made its argument about humanity. And there's a third dimension to this film that I think gets lost in the conversation. It is smaller, it is quieter, but it is the thing that for me makes this more than a great genre film. Ryland Grace doesn't want to be a hero.
This planet will go extinct.
You'll find a solution.
You are my solution.
I put the knot in astronaut. I've never done anything. I've never done a spacewalk. I can't even moonwalk.
Well, that sounds like a familiar setup. The reluctant hero who overcomes his doubts and rises to the occasion. We've seen that film 1,000 times, but Hail Mary is not doing that. Or at least, not only that. What the film is asking is a sharper question. What do you do when the thing being asked of you is not something you can grow into in time? Grace isn't afraid of the mission because he lacks courage. He's afraid of it because he genuinely doesn't believe the version of himself that's needed at that moment actually exists. He's a man who spent his entire adult life carefully managing his exposure to things that matter too much. Importance is dangerous. Care is dangerous. He knows this, and he's protected himself accordingly. And the mission dismantles that protection, not by making him braver, by making him necessary. And there's a difference. Without spoiling, there's a moment in the film where Grace has to make a choice that has nothing to do with science, nothing to do with survival calculus, nothing to do with his duty to Earth or humanity or to the mission. It's a purely personal choice about what kind of person he has decided to be in the absence of anyone watching or judging or even knowing. And the film is about that choice. Everything else, the astrophage, the neutrinos, Rocky's ammonia-breathing biology, is the frame. And the painting inside the frame is about a man who spent his life making himself small, but then discovering that he's capable of something great, something vast. Not because the universe demanded it, because he chose to do it. And it's also worth mentioning that Project Hail Mary arrives at an interesting cultural moment. We are more technologically capable and more emotionally isolated than any generation in history. We have the most powerful communication tools ever built, and we are struggling to actually communicate. We know more about the universe than we ever had, and a lot of us feel further from wonder than ever. This film is a corrective, not a lecture, but a reminder. It says science is not cold. Curiosity is not trivial. The capacity to reach toward something you don't understand is not a weakness. It is maybe the most human thing there is. Thank you for watching all the way through. I am Gökhan Baş. This is my first YouTube video. On this channel, I'll be exploring movies more deeply, breaking down their meaning and looking at their social, psychological, and political layers. And if you've seen the film, I'd love to know what you took away from it, especially the ending. Drop it in the comments, and if you haven't seen it yet, see it. It's amazing.